July 11, 2022 Metropolitan Traffic and Parking Commission meeting. If you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Traffic and Parking Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Before proceeding to the next thing, first of all, we want to remember one of our fellow commissioners, Reverend Marvin Neal, passed away last month after a long battle with cancer. And that, was the reason he had unfortunately not been able to attend. And when he was in his prime, he was a happy, jovial, energetic person, and we will miss him. So we all ask that everybody just take a moment to remember him. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Move for approval of today's agenda.
Move to approve.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Chair,
Yes.
I have a question about
Yes.
today's agenda.
Yes, ma'am.
At last meeting, the LAZ parking agreement was deferred one meeting, but is not reflected on this agenda. And so I just wanted to clarify for the public record when that will be
Which-
taken up again.
I'm sorry, which item are you referring to? I think it was.
Well, it's not reflected on the agenda, but at last meeting, the LAZ parking contract approval was deferred one meeting.
Oh, the park, you're talking about the smart parking?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay. Well, it's not on the agenda because it is still going through the procurement process. Legal counsel, will you please advise?
Yes, as you all had been informed at previous meetings, there was an objection by Mr. David White of Nelson Mullins on behalf of SP Plus, which was another company that had originally been interested in bidding on the RFP, but that the purchasing agent deemed to be non-responsive and untimely. The attorney for that party then appealed that decision of the purchasing agent to the Procurement Appeals Board, and and at that stage, there's usually an automatic stay that goes into effect until the procurement matter is resolved.
So I guess, Chair, my question would be, if on the public record we said that we deferred that one meeting, do we need to take any action here for clarity about when it will be next addressed?
Not that I'm aware of. Is that correct, counsel?
I mean, the stay is applicable regardless of what you all do, but you can, if you want to defer it indefinitely until the stay is lifted or something like that, I suppose you could.
Or, I mean, I defer to you, Chair. I just wanted for the record, since what the record reflected was a one meeting deferral, it wasn't addressed at this meeting. I just think it's of broad community interest, and so we should just share to the best of our ability
Right.
when it will be back, if that will be
Okay.
at next meeting.
I think we're unclear pending the resolution of the procurement issue,
Yeah.
which is a legal matter kind of beyond our control.
Yeah, as I understand it, the Procurement Appeals Board meets on an as-needed basis, so I don't know that there's like a meeting scheduled specifically for this at this point yet, but hopefully it will be soon.
So I think we chose not to put it on the agenda, considering that we weren't going to be able to make any consideration of it.
Okay, well, if the record, whether that's the minutes or the next agenda, could just reflect, that it's, again, indefinite, or, I think we need
Okay.
some manner of precision on
Okay,
it.
if you would like to make a motion, we would entertain a motion.
Well, I think, Chair, I would just make a motion that today's minutes clearly reflect that while we made a one meeting deferral at last meeting, pending a review of the Procurement Standards Board, the minutes shall reflect that it's, in my view, that's an indefinite deferral from a process standpoint, but I defer to you on the appropriate motion
Okay.
wording.
I'm still unclear if we need a motion. I do not see that we do.
I mean, basically what the stay says is that any progress on approving the agreement is stayed. So if you perceive that this commission approving it would be progress on that, which I think it's kind of hard to argue that it's not.
I would argue that that's the case. So, all right, just have the minutes reflect that this is pending legal, okay?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So there's a first and a second on the agenda. Is there all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Approval of the minutes of the June 13th, 2022 meeting. I think we have a slight change because one commissioner was here and he was marked as absent, and the other one who was absent was marked
That's
as
right,
here.
yeah.
So Brandon Mason was marked as absent. He was here. Sante was absent. So
Okay.
we can make that change.
Yeah,
Are there
Chairman, and I
any-
believe there, not to interrupt you, but there was also some statements that apparently I made on the minutes.
Okay.
And maybe that might have been Brandon, and just, let's make sure
Yes,
those get
okay.
corrected as well, please.
Okay, if those could be corrected. Are there any other corrections to the minutes? Yes,
Yes.
council member.
Thank you, Chair. So I was going to make a similar note. I don't believe, Commissioner Tafel, that where you're attributed as speaking when you were not here, I don't think those were in fact the words of Mr. Mason. I think they were content from the previous minutes. I would say, Chair, that these minutes are replete with errors. And so I have a very long list of
Okay,
all the
well-
amendments that are needed, and I didn't know if you want me to
I
go
think we
with
should
that.
make a motion to defer these minutes, so that then if there's concerns that everyone can then submit their, changes to the folks, and then we'll consider them at our next meeting. I think that seems more appropriate than
I believe
going
so. There
through
are,
line by line. And so please, staff, let's, note to try to be more attentive.
yeah, to
Next
whom
time.
should we send all the errors, please, Chair?
Send your corrections is, to me, a better phrasing. Send your corrections, suggestions to Jason, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Approval of so we need a motion to defer the minutes, please.
So,
So moved.
second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Approval of the consent agenda. Please note that items on the consent agenda will be voted on at a single time. No individual public hearing will be held, nor will the commission debate these items unless a member of the audience or the commission requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda. It's my understanding that there's an item that needs to be removed. Is that correct?
Yes,
Staff.
item number A, we're going to move that to new business, so we can discuss later.
Okay. All right. Are there any other corrections to the consent agenda?
That is all.
Anyone else? That would leave just two items on the consent agenda. Okay. All right,
I'll make a
So-
motion to approve the two items on the consent agenda.
okay. We need a motion to defer to remove the one item. So
I will make that motion to remove
Okay.
item A to
We-
new business.
we have a motion to remove item A. Is there a
Second.
second? We have a second. All in favor? Aye. All right. I'll read the consent agenda as modified, and then we'll move for approval. Item B is a mandatory referral 2022 M004AB001, a request for the abandonment of a portion of Whitsett Road right-of-way with easements retained on map 119-10, partial 0382 and 245, requested by constituent. Item C is a mandatory referral 2022M005AB001, a request for the abandonment of alley number 456 with easements retained from alley 442 to the terminus of alley 456, requested by constituent. Okay. Consent agenda's been read. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. All in favor? Okay. So staff, let's go to item A, which is a request for the abandonment of a portion of Lock Road right-of-way and easement.
This item, we withdrew from the last agenda. We wanted to try to coordinate with others, and we got feedback just recently before just after the agenda went out and was posted, from the Park Service. They plan to request that this be retained, and we were kind of split, but we would like to side with them, so we would change our recommendation to retain due to greenway plans. So that is our recommendation from NDOT. To retain, yes, sir.
Recommendation to deny this request?
Yes, yes, sir, it is.
All right. Any other comments? Yes, Councilman.
Just a question, Chair. So, Mr. Oldham, can you just share with us from a process standpoint, when these abandonments are requested, how they do, or are they always referred through to parks? And so just, can you speak to process as it relates to parks and greenways? And then can you speak to what greenway in the master plan this would be needed for, please?
Requested that information for the exact greenway planning document. I don't have that. I requested via email, so I did not have that in time for this meeting. As far as process, I'm still learning the process. And I think I lost one. Yeah, it's back. But I do believe all of these are sent out to all metro departments to review at the same time. We have actually, I think, pretty short turnaround to try to get them on the next commission agendas. And so we took this off, hoping that it wouldn't go through council before we had time to talk about it with others. But there was a request by others in NDOT and the Park Service to retain.
So I guess my question, Chair, is should this matter be withdrawn, or should this matter be disapproved? That would be my question. Like, what is the appropriate motion?
I think the staff was recommending disapproval.
I think so. I think if we withdraw it, it just goes with like a non-confirmation or to the council. Is that correct?
I mean, if the commission doesn't take any action by passing something by a motion at a public meeting, then nothing happens. But at the same time, I would say normally the word withdraw, I would think it would be the applicant's prerogative to withdraw. So unless the applicant wishes to withdraw it, I would say you all should vote on whether to approve or disapprove.
Okay.
And is the applicant here, or have they been consulted about the disapproval?
We have not consulted the applicant.
So how are we going to, Chair, with all due respect? I mean, I support the greenways. I think that's excellent. I do want to defer to their judgment, but from a process standpoint, I just don't understand how we could move to disapprove when that was not the staff recommendation on the staff analysis.
It would appear that the constituent should have a voice in this, who made the request. And she is not here. They have not been consulted, so.
No.
Okay, so it seems like the appropriate action is to defer this item so that all parties can be consulted.
I make a motion to defer for 1 month.
Okay.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the authorized request for 50 to 100 spaces complimentary parking at Public Square Garage for Women Touched by Addiction Day, Saturday, July 23rd. I think staff has some comments concerning this request.
I think we reached out to someone representing this group that would show up today to speak on this request.
Yes, would you like to where, if you go to the podium, please. Please identify yourself for the record. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. I'm April Douglas, Chief Development Officer of Mending Hearts. We are asking for a 50 to 100 spaces for an event called Women Touched by Addiction. We are the only full continuum of care facility serving women in Middle Tennessee, all of Tennessee actually, regardless of their ability to pay. So we serve 110 women at a time, over 5,000 women. We are a long-term program, so women can stay up to 2 years to recover from addiction. With the fentanyl and opioid crisis, we created this event to help on the back end for our alumni and the stigma that they face in reintegrating into society. And so we expect some prominent community members there and wanted to alleviate some of our recovery clients, alumni from having to pay for parking fees.
Thank you. Staff, I think you all had made some recommendations concerning these kind of requests.
Yes, we don't really have really a process or a policy regarding these types of requests. It landed on the June agenda with the 4th of July, which was a Metro-sponsored event. And I think we deferred it a month to talk about it, but the recommendation from NDOT right now would be the denial of the complimentary parking. It's not a Metro-sponsored event, and we really need to talk internally about how to handle these.
Okay. Thank you. Discussion from commissioners?
Do we have any more events like this that are not Metro pending, or do you know?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
May I ask then again, just to process, as this was on the June agenda, and we did have some conversation about it, understanding that there are very, very worthy organizations that are seeking free parking, but that the commission did not want to be put in the position of kind of picking favorites, right? And not having a policy about this. So as I read the staff recommendation for denial and movement towards such a policy, to Commissioner Wood's point about, is there anything else in the queue, fair warning, so to speak. Were you in touch with Ms. Douglas to tell her that the recommendation was denial of complimentary parking?
I'm not sure staff was in touch.
Ms. Douglas, was staff in touch with you?
Yes, as far as the details of today, but not the details of the event or the parking itself.
So you were aware as you came today that the staff recommendation was denial?
No,
Of
I was not.
You were not made aware of that?
No. I was given logistics of today and speaking in time and that sort of thing, but that's it.
Okay, commissioners, I think my stance on this generally and going forward was clear at last meeting, but due to process and fairness, I would move approval on this. But Chair, I would like to speak to some of the content of the staff analysis as far as the next step, whether that is as part of discussion on this item or subsequent to the discussion on this item. But I would make an motion, despite my general expressed concerns about this, but given process, I would move approval.
Okay. We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All right.
Chair, would you suggest that discussion about the policy going forward happen now or move that to new business later?
Well, I was actually getting ready to speak to that
Okay,
before.
well, that just informs whether or not I'm
Okay.
going to discuss it more now.
So it would appear that the minutes need to reflect the discussion that we need to develop a policy concerning these so that all are treated in a way that's, whatever term we want to use, equitably or fairly, that there's a process so that any applicant who makes it will know what that is. So I think we'd like to try to see a policy back at the commission, I don't know what's reasonable, 60 days?
90 days?
90 days? It would be, is 90 days acceptable to fellow commissioners?
Chair Green, what would happen in the intervening 90 days for applications?
To my knowledge, we have no other applications at the present time, and I would think that we would want to, I mean, we can discuss this, commissioners, but, you know, one idea would be not to consider any more requests pending the adoption of a new policy.
That would be NDOT's also request.
For clarity, would that not need to be a separate motion, Chair?
I would think we need a separate motion. There's a motion on this particular request, and then there should be a motion on what the commission would like the staff to do. Okay, so we have a motion on this item. We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion of this request by this group, Ms. Douglas' group?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right. Now, we need a motion considering what we just discussed, the commission's request to staff about developing a policy concerning this matter. Yep.
I make a motion that we have a 90 days, we come back under new business with what the process is for parking, free parking that is not a Metro-sponsored event in the public facility garages. Does that cover it?
All right. So is there a second to that motion?
Second.
We have a first and a second. So now we're open to discussion. Any, yes, council member?
Thank you, Chair. In the staff analysis particular to this most recent item on which we voted, in response to, I think, some really great suggestions that Commissioner Mason made at last meeting, in the discussion that we had, it says, NDOT will establish an internal policy for requests for complimentary parking that requires approval of NDOT director or designee, and also requires that Metro's participation as an event sponsor or as a financial participant in order to be considered for free public parking. So, you know, some costs and so forth were shared per Mr. Mason's suggestion at last meeting, which I appreciate, kind of the quantifiable side of things. But I guess my question is to legal counsel as far as kind of our obligation as a commission. You know, I'm wanting us to have a public policy that's clear somewhere on the website. I'm not really comfortable with it being an internal policy, all due respect to our director. I think they should still come before us. So I just wanted to get that on the record.
All right. It's my understanding, Commissioner Woods, that your proposal, your motion is to have the staff come back to this commission in 90 days with its proposal and recommendation, which we would then review to approve. Is that was my understanding of the discussion. So I did not get the sense that it was going to be internal, not open to the public. In 90 days, it would be on the agenda to discuss.
Yes, sir. I was just reading the staff analysis.
Okay. Well, because this relates to this particular motion under discussion.
Yes, Chair.
Okay.
If I may, I respectfully, Director Eller, kind of looks like y'all looked at this already a little bit. Why do you need 90 days instead of 60 days?
We are currently working on the overall parking program, and this is part of that. And I'm going to need the 90 days to fully get it vetted. We've started working on it, but as you are all aware, we're kind of building a parking program from nothing to something. So it's all tied to that. So that's why I'm asking, given where we are with the contract and everything, I just want it all to be pulled together. So that's why I'm requesting 90 days. If we have it done and we're ready to move it forward, we'll definitely bring it up sooner. But I asked for 90 days just in case with everything going on. But it would be part of the overall parking program as a whole.
And what would happen in the interim 90 days?
Well, I believe the motion that was just put on was that they would not, that any request would be deferred during that time.
Is that correct? That was part of the motion? I didn't understand that. Commissioner Woods, is that part of your motion?
Yes,
Thank you.
Okay.
I think so.
Or that nothing would be approved until the 90 days until the policy came back.
Correct.
Excuse me,
Correct.
I'll clarify that a little bit more.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
That's-
It's hot.
Yes, ma'am, it
yes,
is.
we cannot approve anything until we have a policy. I think
Correct.
that was the discussion. Okay. We have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion of this item? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. All right. The next item on the agenda is sidewalk vending. There's consideration of draft regulations. Staff has distributed to all commissioners the draft regulations. And before we'll start the public hearing, we'll get a presentation from staff. And then I know there's numerous people here to speak on this matter.
Yeah, we can start. So you said start the presentation. Corey, do you have it? All right. Real quickly, I have 5 bullets here, just to try to get everybody up to speed. My mic's working here, I can't tell. There's 5 things. The Metro Code 1308-040 was amended in 2018. It does not reflect the 2017 adopted regulations, and those regulations actually aren't on file.
Jason?
Yes.
If I may correct that slightly,
Yes.
so the regulations that were promulgated pursuant to 1308-040 of the code
Yep.
were the ones that you're talking about. The code itself was not changed.
Correct. Thank you for that clarification. I should have had you proof this. Second bullet, additional restriction area map reference by the code section above and a regulation does not exist to NDOT's knowledge. Third bullet, pedestrian safety, accessibility concerns have been raised regarding sidewalk vendors. Sidewalk vending advisory committee concerns. This is a group that was established, I think a couple months ago, that involved Mmpd, NDOT, the vendors, merchants, downtown partnership, representatives from health, clerk's office, legal, and others. And also, last bullet here, currently there are, according to the clerk's office, 230 to 250 active full-time sidewalk vending permits, and there are approximately twice that amount, 500 seasonal vendor permits. And just to give you a quick example of the difference between what is currently in the code and versus the regulation section 7, you can see Demumbrian Street is not included in the regulation as a restricted street in the regulation section 7. Also, 7 allows there to be spots on 2nd Avenue and Commerce where the code section does not. There's also, in 2018, Symphony Place and the pedestrian bridge was added to the code section as a restriction. So there are some discrepancies between those two. Next slide. And if there's any questions, you can please stop me if you have them. The next section, just the heading, the missing map. I just want to talk about this briefly. Again, NDOT is not aware of the existence of this map at it being, developed in conjunction with the code regulation. NDOT, staff from NDOT, and also Mmpd have tried to develop a map and hand that out to vendors. Those maps do not agree. The Mmpd map, in my opinion, is more current, more up to date. but it does have some discrepancies that we can talk about later. Next slide. This map is the one that Mmpd has been handing out. They have a legend at the bottom. Everything in blue refers back to Section 6, which Section 6 in the regulation, the 2017 version adopted regulation, is basically a list of required measurement criteria. When that measurement criteria from loading zones, meters, corners of curb returns, when all that's measured, it pretty much restricts the majority of the downtown sidewalks as represented in the blue shading. The red shading refers to Section 8 of the regulation, which excludes Symphony Place, the pedestrian bridge, 2nd and Commerce. It does not show Demumbrian, and it does not show all the limits on 2nd that are restricted by the code section. The police have tried to, in yellow, show where parking would work based on the measurements from Section 6. So there is a large area that's affected, that's restricted by those two regulation sections. Next slide. And this is just a quick example of what we pulled this morning on Broadway and some of the side streets as far as those loading zones, both public and those commercial loading zones that make it very difficult to make those measurements work to allow vending on Broadway and the side streets. And let's see here. And I think there's 32 listed locations above in the area of Broadway. Next slide. So this is code section 6, regulation section 6. And you can see a lot of the dimensions are recorded here. And this is pulling from the 2017 adopted version. Distances from doorways, curb returns, loading zones, bus stops, parking meters, etc., fire escape. Also, there's for sight distance accommodations for vehicles to be able to see. Next slide is code as regulation section 7, and this is where the map is referenced in both the code and the regulation, and that map that we have clarified does not exist officially. This section here is outdated based on the code, and so just wanted to point that out. But there is a map that's basically supposed to show these restricted streets. And if you go based on the latest code section that we have from 2018, you will see those restricted streets that should, if there was a map created, it should look like that. The only thing that is missing on this map is one spot that Mmpd noted on their map on Demumbrian that parking would be allowed. But it would look something like that. This does not capture section 6 of all the measurements that you have to make out there. Next slide. And again, this is just more information, the bill number, where the additional segments were added. Next slide. Yep.
Apologize. Was Demumbrian a part of the 2018 bill?
It was not. It was on there before the
It was on the
2018.
2017.
I didn't look at all the different revisions, but it was before the 2018.
And who is the lead sponsor of the 2018 legislation, please?
Go back one. I think it's on there. O'Connell. There was, also, that was missing from this. There was not really any justification for any of these street restrictions that I could find. It was just requested and approved.
So there's no council staff analysis for the bill?
I mean, I'm sure there is, I just could not locate anything on it. Not in the time frame that I was trying to locate it.
Okay.
All right, so here's both the Mmpd map and the NDOT Public Works map side by side. And you can see, we identified some potential in green, some spots that would be allowed that didn't show up on the MMPD and vice versa. So there's also more restrictions missing on this map because it does not have Symphony Place, does not have the pedestrian bridge shown. It doesn't really have the extensive Demumbrian shown all the way out to Music Row. So the MNPD map was more up to date in my opinion. Next slide. All right, shifting to looking at potential routes for restrictions. We have ongoing work related to Vision Zero. We have maps that have been created, networks representing, and this is online, our high injury networks, our pedestrian high injury network, and the bicyclist high injury network. The one that we're reviewing right now is the pedestrian high injury network. And you can see the number of streets that were flagged. There's more streets that are flagged based on motorist high injury, but these are the ones that involve pedestrian crashes. Next slide. This was the methodology that was shared by NDOT's consultant. There's differences in colors for the motorist map, low, medium, and high for prioritization purposes internally. For the pedestrian and cyclist map, we opted not to do low, medium, and high. When you have a fatality or one fatality, it's important, so we didn't want to marginalize. Next slide. This was a heat map that I actually pulled from Strava, which is just the users of that app. And you can log walks, jogs, whatever you want, your activity. So this is refreshed every month. So this is more than likely representing June, the month of June of this year. You can see the hotter streets, Broadway, obviously Demumbrian and others, and you can see foot traffic going up, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and all. So next slide. And I included ADT on these maps, but I basically overlaid that pedestrian high entry network over these footpaths in downtown Nashville, and you can see some pretty good consistencies here.
Mr. Ullman,
yes,
what is
go ahead.
AADT?
The average annual daily traffic for those streets. So I actually put vehicular volumes so that we could just see the number of vehicles.
Okay, so when it says Broadway, 13,662 AADT, that means what exactly in the context
Traffic
of Broadway?
volume average per day, and that's both directions.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. All right. So getting back to proposing some restrictions, this has kind of been requested by law enforcement, and also just clarity on these restrictions in general. And I think it's needed, just based on the description of these with the code and the regulation, and the need for a map and not a need for multiple maps. This is based on reflecting what's in the current code. The next slide, Corby, would be incorporating those pedestrian high injury streets to the streets that have already been restricted. and this would be the regulation that was posted online. That has been updated, section 7, to reflect these streets. I did see this morning Church Street I had left off, so I went back and added that, and I will make that available to all the commissioners, and I will also put that online. But that is what a current recommendation would be from NDOT.
I apologize, you're saying Church Street was left off the map or
I'm sorry, off
what
the
was
regulation? Yes.
sent to us on Friday?
Yeah, the actual section 7. Next slide. And also overlaid pedestrian crashes onto that high entry pedestrian network so that you could kind of see kind of how those streets were part of the justification for being prioritized. And this from 2015 to 2022. There are a couple of streets that didn't make it on the high entry network that I would probably add, but I'm going to talk to our consultants about that. But 3rd Avenue would be one that's missing, and you can see the crashes down 3rd. So going back to what Mmpd has been passing out, what they have been passing out, and I don't know how long, I have not had time to talk with them as much as I wanted to, but the majority of the area in downtown entertainment district is for the most part restricted by current section 6, section 7 of the regulation. I am confident there is challenges in enforcing that, especially without an official map to accompany the regulation. So this is what we try to do in a compressed amount of time to get this in front of you and for you to have some time to look at it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions about the presentation before we go to hearing from individuals, from commissioners?
I'd like to thank the staff. Thank you.
All right. So I know there's, yes, Council. Wait just a minute, please. Yes, Councilman.
Thank you, Chair. I just have some clarification questions. I appreciate, I know I posed some of them in progress to Mr. Oldham, but just looking back at my notes from what he has shared, I wanted to direct my questions to legal counsel. So what happened in 2017? The regulations for this were updated by whom and where was that reflected? Because the document that we received on Friday, that is a strike changes edited document, it is based, best I can understand, on 1998 regulations. And so I'm trying to understand kind of the interim step, because as we consider the next step to take and what the understanding is in the public, obviously there's some disparity here. I need to understand kind of, what's going on in 2017.
So I think we're talking about two slightly different things.
Okay.
So of course you have the code section, which is adopted by ordinance by council. And that is, as Mr. Oldham was saying, 1308-040. And 1308-040, capital letter B6K, delegates to this commission the authority to make regulations about sidewalk vending and all kinds of sidewalk encroachments. So the commission then adopted regulations. I think maybe the original one was actually dated 1992, and it was updated in 98, and then updated in 2015, and then updated in 2017. But what has happened is that while the regulations themselves provide that they become effective when they're filed with the Metropolitan Clerk's Office. So the Metropolitan Clerk's Office has the 2015 version on file. So The 2017 amendments by this commission to their own regulations are not yet on file with the Metropolitan Clerk's office. So that was the issue as far as that was concerned, but that is not what Mr. Oldham was just talking about. He was talking about a council bill that passed in 2018 that specifically amended the code provisions to exempt a couple more streets from vending.
Okay, additional point of clarification then, Chair, if I may. So I did reach out to the Metropolitan Clerk on Friday to inquire, number of permits, what's given to vendors, where, because I had understood based on previous conversations, when people refer to the clerk, for me, that means the Metro Clerk, but I acknowledge because
It's actually, for most of that, it's actually the county clerk.
Understood, and so just to speak that into the record for some of the confusion.
Yes, there is some confusion
Because we
there.
are a city-county consolidated government, we created a Metro Clerk position, but state law, and we still have a Davidson County Clerk, and a lot of the business-related permitting happens there.
Yes.
Though awkwardly and confusingly, door-to-door solicitation happens with the clerk. So what I'm seeing here is it looks like there's been a lack of clarity around which clerk.
Yeah.
And
So
what gets filed where.
The code provision, section 1308040, does refer to the county clerk as being the place where permits are applied for and received. And it does refer to the map that Mr. Oldham was referring to as being given out by the county clerk. However, it is the Metropolitan Clerk that the regulations are supposed to be filed with. It's more like the official record keeper of the metropolitan government. So if that's clear as mud, I apologize, but that's the distinction.
Okay, one more point of clarification on the same point as it relates to clerk, and active permits. I did also then this morning, learning that it was not the Metro Clerk, reach out to Clerk Wynn's office. And again, we received these on Friday for a meeting on Monday, so I'm doing my best to get the information. So I was glad to see the actual permit number. But what I don't understand is, are these annual permits subject to a renewal? Do we know that, are there 250 people presently authorized to vend, or have we let these lapse because we're not administering them? And then I guess I would want to understand, is it only one type of permit, or is there a distinction if somebody is selling food, beverage, consumable material versus non-consumable material? So when you say 250 active permits, is that for different types of permits? So I just wanted to get some clarity on the permit numbers.
So I will defer to staff on the numbers on the permits, but I will say that yes, the permits that are issued by NDOT and by the county clerk's office those are not the health permits, those are separate. But if someone does sell food, they do also have to get permits from the health department separately. But the permits that we are talking about for like NDOT and traffic and parking, those permits are annual. They do expire at the end of the year. I think they automatically renew if there's not a basis for non-renewal.
Right. I think there's a person from the clerk's office who can address some of these issues. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, please identify yourself for the record.
Ronnie Perkins, Deputy Clerk, Davidson County Clerk's Office. Madam Commissioner, the permits that you're referring to is actually the actual sidewalk encroachment permit, which is issued by the Davidson County Clerk's Office. Generally speaking, it's good for 1 year or the term of the insurance, because they have to have insurance, so the expiration date is always in line with that. Then they have to either renew the insurance, pay another $100, go through the process of renewal upon their choice if they choose to. So we're basically just the facilitator for the vendors who choose to want to go through that process. We try to help them through it as much as they can. It's pretty simple, pretty easy. But like you said, it needs some help. I hope that answers the question about your permit.
It does, and then I think just to build on what Ms. Costonis said, so when it goes to health, because there's a consumable product, when and how does that happen? Do you still administer the referral to health and then it comes back to you before you award the encroachment, or where
The
does
way,
that go?
the way it's currently written, or the way it's been interpreted, and I hope it's the same thing, the vendor has to bring all of those things to us in order for us to approve it. That's why we have a 30-day window, up to a 30-day window before we approve it. We have to contact health to ensure that the health permit that they've shown us is current. We have to contact the insurance vendor because a lot of Microsoft Paint issues have taken place that we've caught, to ensure that it's an actual insurance, so that the city is covered. And health is only involved if it's a situation where they're preparing food. Currently, the way it's written, if it's packaged food that comes packaged and they're not preparing it, a health permit is not required. It's only for those vendors who are actually preparing food on site. That's our understanding, how it was explained to us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other clarification comments from commissioners? Yes, Mr.
Chairman, I've got a question regarding Section 5 in the regulations for temporary sidewalk encroachments. Kind of goes into hand with what our current councilwoman described. So in a place of business, you are required to have up visible to the public your permit and how we spoke about your business license, as well as if you prepare food, your permit from the health board. In this section, it discloses that you have to make those items public if you have a stand. I'm just curious, how is that currently monitored? So how can the public or no, because the gentleman with the county clerk, it kind of explained to us what the process is to receive the permit. According to Section 5, you're required to show it and display it to the public. I'm just curious, how is that monitored?
Can you speak to that, Mr. Perkins?
Currently the county clerk's office is not charged with the monitoring of that. We instruct, I would say pretty much everyone that comes through, please be mindful. Keep your permit, keep your business license, if applicable, keep your health permit, your insurance, and have your badge displayed on you while you are downtown vending. It's for their own benefit because those are the things that are required. And I have to say, the majority of people that I run into comply, or they say they are on the front end, but we have no knowledge of anyone that might be falling through the cracks because, again, there is no check and balance in place currently with the way the current ordinance is written.
Chair, can I build on Commissioner Teffel's question
Yes.
about Section 5?
Please.
I appreciate him pointing out. So it says, if the vendor sells food or beverages, no distinction about package, not package, making it, not making it. The health permit must also be prominently and conspicuously displayed. So that seems also, again, to be a disparity.
How does this thing work? I don't think it's a disparity because for drinks, we never required it. It's already a packaged product. They can't be exposed to anything when someone chooses to make that purchase. But if they're actually purchasing for lack of anything else, a hot dog, hamburger, pizza, or whatever, where it has to be prepared on site, the health department has required that a health permit has to be issued for that. Now, you might want to follow up with them, but they've never instructed us that individuals selling sodas or just water only were required to have a health permit. Now, there are those food vendors who are selling open food that will also sell beverages, which is fine. But again, we're just trying to ensure that they have everything to protect them and that we have everything to protect the city so the relationship is good.
And do you provide a checklist when someone comes to you? So you're saying when they show up to get this permit from you,
We have
Yeah.
an entire packet that we
Okay.
ask them to go through that lays out specifically everything that's needed. The type of insurance and the minimum amount that's required, the application for the permit that has to take place, the business license permit, license that they're required to have, 3 passport-sized photos, because the ordinance says they're required to submit 3 passport-sized photos in order to get a badge. And then anything that's applicable, whether it's health permit or things of that nature, we ensure we have it. A picture of their card, a copy of the driver's license of the individuals. All this is on the front end. This just gets them out the door and to the sidewalk. And then after that, unfortunately, we don't have any oversight.
I appreciate that. And Chair Green, could I ask that that link be sent to us by staff, just so we understand
Yes.
the process from that end? Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Any other?
I could maybe add a little bit of light, if it's okay, on the health regulations. And I'm not health lawyer, so I may be mangling this, but my memory is that the health regulations are actually state regulations that are delegated to our Metro Department of Health to enforce. And so, any state law is going to prevail and kind of preempt any Metro Code provision. So if we were inconsistent, what they say would go.
All right, thank you. All right, so I know there's people here who would like to speak, and what I'd like to do is open the floor up for comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes or less. State your name for the record, and whoever would like to speak, if they would come forward, please.
Good afternoon, and I want to thank all of you for having me, and I would like to thank all of you for coming, those of you who are in support of sidewalk vending, and even those of you who are not, because that's what we want. We want to open up a conversation like what this gentleman said. Let all parties be heard.
Can you
let all
identify
parties-
yourself, please, ma'am?
What?
Can you identify yourself
Oh,
first,
sure.
please? Yeah.
Tina Schmidewer. I am Get Tasseled. I sell these on 5th and Broadway, and I am a retired teacher of 30 years, but I still continue to teach at Grace Christian Academy because I couldn't cut the umbilical cord from teaching. A couple of things I just want to bring up. This is what I'm hearing as a teacher. Okay, imagine your classroom, and you're in there, and it's recess time, but there's been 2 students who have been misbehaving, and recess is cut for everybody. That's what we're feeling as vendors, is there are some vendors out there who are illegally not following, Ronnie, where'd he go? Not following his instruction, and they are not following the rules. So because of those naughty people, the people who are following the rules, paying for a $1 million insurance policy. I think my life insurance is only $300,000, and I have a $1 million policy for Davidson County. Imagine that, and that's kind of how we're feeling at this time. What I have done is, if I may, I took the mayor's letter. I teach English language arts, and so I broke it down into parts, and only the pieces that I could find evidence for in what was already given on the internet through newscasts, newspapers. That's all I had to go by. So I'm just going to give everybody one of these, or groups of 2, because I wanted to know how many of you would be here. This is kind of what I took time to do. And this is strictly on just what I had available to me.
Ma'am, if I may, you're going to need to make sure that the recorder has one of these, so you're going to need, or she, or just one less to the commission, because
Okay.
it needs to be reflected in the record, please.
Sure, I will definitely do that. Thank you. So my point is, anybody reading the mayor's letter and hearing that complaint is given 7 claims that are not supported in that letter. They are just stated claims. And I broke that down for you in my letter, or in what I have just given you. What we would like, in order to have this conversation as a group for the best of Nashville, is to see what exactly are the disruptive effects that vendors are performing. Because when I'm on the street with my cohorts, we are professional, we have our business, we have everything there for any officer to come and check. We have every single thing there. What I just heard in asking somebody over here in your commission's office is that after it gets late o'clock is when people start selling hot dogs from Costco or something like that. That's what I heard. And so they do not have the identifiers to prove that they have the right to be on that street. So my point being, here we are, we're following the rules, we want recess, but because of those people who are not following the rules, which I totally agree with you in the establishments, that would be a distraction. I totally agree with you on that. But that's what needs to be addressed, not those of us who are selling. Question, comment? Yes, ma'am. Oh, I thought you were leaning forward. You wanted to talk.
The chair needs to recognize me.
Yep.
if I'm gonna-
Yes,
Yes, quick question, please, because our time is almost up.
yeah, 'cause
Please.
Yes, sir. It was just a point of order. I wondered if you could kind of speak into the room the amount of time that everybody speaking has, please. Is it 3 minutes or
They
2
have-
minutes?
It's 3 minutes is what we said at the beginning.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the
thank you.
clarification.
yeah. And then all I wanted to say at the end of this was, at the end of what I supplied you are some ideas that maybe we could do as a city of Nashville working together. And I never complain without offering my assistance. I would be glad, more than happy to join in on any conversation that anybody may have about sidewalk vending. Questions, comments? Okay, thank you.
Who would like to speak next, please? Please state your, again, a reminder, state your name for the record, 3 minutes or less for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Jamie Holland, legal counsel to Greenhouse Tennessee LLC. First, need to bring up the fact that these draft rules were improperly noticed, not made available until Councilmember Henderson said Friday. I did not see it Friday, saw it this morning. Would submit this cannot be heard at this meeting as it wasn't duly published in a timely manner. Legal counsel mentioned 1308-040B6K. Says the commission shall have the authority and publish and enforce such other regulations necessary to effectuate this section. Well, 6A says the sale of goods and services by street vendors is limited to DTC and CF zone districts. In other words, the map and the new regulations are going to wipe out where you can do it, not exactly effectuating the purpose of the section. The legislative history, BL 2018-1295, that amends section 6F. It simply added the pedestrian bridge. 6L was amended by BL 2012-334. I say all that to say this. These past ordinances, including 2009-587, that merely changed the nomenclature from commercial core to DTC. BL 2003-38 made them change the name of a badge, what the person had to wear. In other words, anything substantive relative to 1308-040 came from the council, not from the Traffic and Parking Commission. You're going to hear from many people where lots of lives are being impacted financially in a negative way because somebody didn't like something or somebody hadn't been doing their job. Let's not wipe them off the map here. If anything, let's let the council do it. That's what they've been doing every single time this bill has been amended. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Marcus Wingfield, and I wanted to address a couple of things that you all had mentioned earlier. One being the monitoring of the food vendors, who is indeed monitoring that. Metro comes by pretty much on a daily basis and monitors the vendors that are out there. I know out there on Broadway, so we have to have our health permits, business license. All of those things are noted right there on our cars, visible. From what I've seen in the past, if a vendor does not have that, then Metro will issue them a ticket, citation, and whatnot, and they will be forced to pack it up and leave. So As far as the health department goes, and as far as the permits and things like that goes, Metro is out there enforcing that. They do a great job of checking and making sure that everybody is licensed and legal to be out there, as far as what I'm seeing out there on Broadway. Another thing that I'd like to state is I see that you all have an issue saying with pedestrian safety. Well, the way that it states, if you're within the guidelines, then the pedestrians have more than enough room to walk by, probably more so in the vending areas than they do on regular sidewalk areas. There's more than enough room for pedestrians to get by. I don't see where there's a safety issue if the vendors are going by based off of what the laws and the statutes state. So that's what my takes on that. So if you all have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Thank you for your comments.
My name is Brady Cannon. I'm here today representing the Nashville Convention Visitors Corp. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission for allowing me to share our perspective with you all today. After working with downtown stakeholders and hearing from our members, we would like to encourage the Traffic and Parking Commission to promulgate strong vending regulations without the proper infrastructure in place, and given the pedestrian traffic flow within the entertainment district, activations like street vending only add to the overall congestion and threaten public safety for both visitors and local Nashvillians. As our convention business has only recently started to recover, we have heard from numerous clients about the chaotic conditions of downtown. The proliferation of street vendors and the sale of illegal substances exacerbate these concerns. It is our observation that the lack of current street regulation or street vending regulation makes the challenge of enforcement increasingly difficult on Mmpd. We recognize that street vending alone is not responsible for all of the issues facing downtown, but their contribution to an overcrowded and unsafe atmosphere cannot continue to go without strict regulation. We want downtown businesses of all kinds to thrive, but safety and compliance must remain our top priorities. We thank you all for your leadership in resolving this complex issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next, please?
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chairman and members of the Commission. My name is Jeanette Barker. Here speaking as the VP of Strategic Development for the Nashville Downtown Partnership. We're really grateful for all of this hard work on the matter of right-of-way in Nashville. As a unified voice for those who live, work, play, and invest specifically in downtown, the Downtown Partnership is taking this opportunity to convey strong support for overhauled regulations that will drastically improve the quality of life in our downtown neighborhood. This careful review of what is permissible and how vending interacts with our downtown is timely. We all know anecdotally that downtown is busier than ever before. The partnership has reviewed various data points to quantify this increase of the use of the downtown neighborhood in meaningful ways. As an example, a review of sales tax collected specifically in the Central Business Improvement District shows that sales tax increased by over 62% since Q4 of 2019. Additionally, downtown Nashville's residential population growth has exploded. Residential population increased by 161% in the past 10 years. In just the past 5 years, it increased 46%, and it is expected to double from where it stands now by the end of the decade. Simply put, the sidewalk obstructions in the Nashville of yesteryear or last year are no longer sustainable in Nashville's right-of-way today. Our center city is a neighborhood shared by increasingly larger populations who need to freely and safely move in and around the neighborhood, whether that's as a pedestrian or in a vehicle. And perhaps most importantly, our first responders must be able to do the same. The parameters you all set on allowable sidewalk obstruction will be a huge help for our city moving forward. Thank you so much for your consideration and leadership in resolving this issue and for your service.
Thank you. Who's next, please?
Chairman Green and commissioners. I'm not going to speak for a long time, but I wanted to point
Please
out.
identify yourself for the
Oh, I'm
record.
sorry. Brenda Sanderson. I am a downtown resident, and I am also the owner of our family owns multiple venues on Broadway. I've been listening to a lot of things that people talk about the calmness of vendors and that everything is just hunky-dory with everybody. They have their permits, they're operating properly. If they were all like this young lady, I don't think we'd all be sitting here talking about this today. There's a state of chaos on Broadway with vendors. We need some immediate relief and boundaries for these folks. You guys have had pictures sent to you of what we're dealing with. It's not a pleasant sight of some of the things we're seeing. I ask you to create some boundaries, create them quickly, particularly for Broadway, and perhaps a square from Demonbreun to Commerce, and the numbered streets along the way, because it's out of control. It's really out of control. We pay a lot of property taxes. We're paying rents, we're paying all kinds of things, taxes, and we have people operating businesses on the street with no rules. So I ask you, please, put together something, some boundaries, some rules for these people, and do it today. Do something today to relieve some of the chaos. We have a lot of meetings with Metro Police. Their hands are kind of tied in a lot of ways. They need to be able to impound things from people that are illegal, that don't have their permits, their health permits. There's all kinds of things being sold on the street that Nashville doesn't need that image. So I thank you for your consideration, and please help us merchants.
Thank you. Okay. Who's next, please?
Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Layla Vartanian. I am a resident downtown and a business owner downtown. There are too many moving parts downtown. It has exploded. We all know business has taken off with all kinds of pedestrians on the streets. Our sidewalks aren't wide enough. We are having a difficult time just trying to widen our sidewalks by the government. It's taken 5 years for us to get a widened sidewalk just for our pedestrians. If you put any more moving parts on these narrow sidewalks, it's very dangerous. I do think that vending needs to be contained in an area, perhaps along the river, First Avenue, just as the trucks that are on Demonbreun, they're all contained on a Thursday afternoon. It's a beautiful idea. They all make business. If we can contain these vendors along Cumberland Avenue, or not Cumberland Avenue, but the Cumberland Way, First Avenue, where they're contained, where they can get inspected, where regulations can be inspected, I think it would be a better idea than having them spread out with no regulations. We don't know where their commissary are. Health department, one day there's a hot dog cart there today, the next day he's not there. So how do you regulate that? If you contain them in an area, I think it would be a justified idea for all. I thank you.
Thank you. Who's next, please?
Thank you guys for having us. My name is Dr. John Newman. I'm a lifelong resident of Middle Tennessee, an alumnus of Lipscomb University, Life University, and fourth generation small business owner. I do own and operating a vendor business downtown. And we're meeting here today to discuss a proposed ban on vending and small business per the request of Mayor Cooper. I have been personally in attendance and in participation with the Stakeholder Action Committee over the past few weeks and months to try to find a middle ground for vendors, the Downtown Partnership, and the City of Nashville. Throughout my years in Middle Tennessee, I've had the privilege to see the city proliferate and grow. I've also seen the development expand, and most importantly, I've seen the positive economic impact of tourism and what it has done for our community from Broadway and beyond. Tourists come to Nashville for many reasons, but the consensus is because of the vibrancy and energy of Broadway. They want to experience all of what Nashville has to offer, and one specifically is our eclectic vending that's been taking place for longer than I've been alive. Regardless of your stance on the vending issue, let me remind you that what vending is in the city. It is the aspiring music artist with a guitar box open, looking for his or her next record label. It is the late night craving for a hot dog after people have been out drinking with their friends and coworkers here for, conventions. And it's a family also pouring their heart and soul into a small business selling guitar string jewelry. Lastly, it's myself and my CBD company, who we employ numerous individuals who need to make ends meet for their families, just trying to make an honest living. And the last example of vending that I want to illustrate is every scooter and scooter company who operates on the sidewalks of downtown Nashville. Through these meetings, the real basis for this proposed ban has been to clean up the sidewalks. If that's truly the case, I will firmly say that the vendors are not the issue. It's the homeless individuals who are sprawled out, sunbathing on the sidewalks, errantly turned over scooters that are clogging up the sidewalks, and it's the sidewalk sandwich signs from every business operating in that district. Every example of vending that I previously mentioned is needed. The demand from our tourists is here, and if you take vending off of the sidewalks for the proposed map, that is a direct attack on small business for these hardworking citizens of Nashville. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here to speak this afternoon?
Hey there, I'll jump in. Sam Reed, we have a company called Jigsaw. I'm here today representing Ryman Hospitality and Geritana LLC. Ryman, as you probably are aware, we have one of the largest investments in hospitality in downtown with the Ryman Auditorium, Ole Red, and the Wild Horse Saloon. And Geritana operates a number of high-rises with residents downtown. So we're sort of representing the interests of the hospitality business industry and downtown residents. I think it was pretty clear from the presentation that we got earlier that there's a lot of confusion, both from vendors themselves, businesses, the general public, and those responsible for enforcement on this issue. And so I think at the very minimum, today's update represents a good first step. We really appreciate the Mayor's Office, NDOT, Downtown Partnership, CVC, Metro Police, and this commission's focus on addressing elements that will help contribute to a positive, clean, and safe environment downtown, and offer up ourselves as being participants in further discussions as this issue continues to be discussed by this commission and the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Bechtel. I'm one of the downtown vendors. I appreciate the opportunity to speak, as we all do. I have not been on Broadway as long as the Sandersons. I have not been on Broadway as long as Layla, but I have been on Broadway for 13 years. I started out as a singer-songwriter standing there with my case open. I was able to move that into running sound, and I became a sound guy down there, and was able to make $50,000 a year running sound. Then I graduated to Nudies on Broadway, making $65,000 a year. And then the vending explosion happened, and I have to be a cannabis person who healed myself of colorectal cancer with cannabis oil. And I now have a website where I share that information on how to heal yourself of cancer and all the wonderful things that cannabis provides. So when the cannabis people were able to use the vending opportunities downtown, that's when things really did change with vending. Vending has been on Broadway for 15, 20 years, and nobody has really cared. In 2020, when COVID happened and when the cannabis people emerged, all of a sudden, people really cared. And what happened is that a lot of the downtown business people, which I understand, they built up Broadway, they made it what it is today, and they want their future insured. But like all good small business people, we came up with something new. We came up with something really interesting. And for the states that aren't allowed to have marijuana laws like us, Tennessee, who's been growing cannabis for 400 years, but it's legal in California since '95, we found legal ways to provide mildly intoxicating cannabis products that were legal as per state law and as per the Federal Farm Bill of 2014. The downtown people all of a sudden in 2020 really didn't like that. And I believe that there were some attempts to make some partnerships between the downtown partnership and the original cannabis person who was the first person to break through. When those partnerships fell through, you will find now that the people who run the cannabis industry and do the vending are now on private property. And they've taken all that and put it on private property. So there's three kinds of vending. There's the traditional one-man band running around with roses downtown. Hey, I got roses. That has never been regulated. That's always been allowed. Metro Legal actually referenced this in a video a couple of months ago, where one-man band, you can carry what's on your person, whatever's on you, you can run around and you can vend. That's always been
You have 30
legal.
seconds.
Thank you. If you're on private property as well, that is legal, and that has nothing to do with vending. You're on private property. You have a pop-up store on private property. What is vending is if you want the permit, and if you want to encroach on the sidewalk, that's what it is sidewalk encroachment. And again, this is all about the egress of humans, being able to properly move in the safety of humanity downtown. So the whole vending program, Metro's concept of it, council's concept of it.
Thank you for your
vendors' concept of
comments.
it all needs
Time's
to be
up. Thank
It
you.
all needs to be revisited. We need to take a new look at the whole program.
Okay.
Thank you.
Who's next, please?
Hello, my name's Ryan Coa. I'm with Icon Entertainment. We have a few businesses downtown. We have Johnny Cash Museum, Patsy Cline, Nudies Honky Tonk, Skulls Rainbow Room. To this gentleman's point, I don't think anyone's really attacking cannabis or food and beverage when it comes to the vending. You know, we have food and beverage, people set up businesses, but I think what it is the regulations that we have to go through, the property taxes, the inspections, we're there 24/7. We're not there when the weather's good. We're not there when there's a concert. We're there for the good, the bad, and the ugly. COVID, property taxes, raised for everyone downtown. Our company specifically saw an increase of $200,000 during COVID. What are we supposed to say? No, pack up shop, go to a different corner? I think what a lot of people are not understanding is that while many of these businesses help create Broadway, but it's now what, $1,900 a square foot? We can't say no to a raise in property taxes. We can't say no to a raise in supply chain issues. We just have to say, hey, we're here for the long haul. And then the city starts to see tremendous growth. We see all these partiers coming into town. We're not seeing convention business coming back as well or as much as we had thought. The mayor's office is very concerned with the overcrowding on Broadway. The party has now leaked into the street on the weekends, on nights. There is an issue. We have to address it. We can't just sit by and say it's going to be okay. We ask you, please help us. Come up with some standards. Don't let it just fall to the wayside. We put a lot of heart and soul, and we have 350 employees and another 100 coming on board by the end of this year. We have to help supply for all those families. And while we're not saying against vending specifically, invest your money into brick and mortar like we have. I think we've invested over $50 million in 4 years into the city, and we're doing the best we can to stay alive just like everyone else. But it shouldn't turn into a free-for-all. Shouldn't be a guy opening up an ice chest charging $1 for water when we have to charge $3. We're automatically going to lose. Is that guy paying the sales tax? We have a deficit all the time in our budget. We don't even have trash pickup. I think we pay $40,000 a month to rent trash trucks. We need every credible
You have 30
dollar.
seconds.
Every credible dollar going back to the city. We cannot be taking and taking and taking and expect everything to just be handed to us. We have to put down our foot and we have to move our city forward. Thank you so much for your time, and I really hope, really hope you guys put in some regulations on this.
Thank you. Who's next, please?
My name is Bush Nassif. I'm a hot dog vendor off on Broadway. And so I've heard many problems with one of my fellow vendors on Broadway that the bars are complaining about us taking money from theirs and us not paying property taxes. And so bars usually close food down at like 10 or 11. hot dog vendors start selling at 10 or 11. So that really plays itself out. And another thing I want to say is that there are too many vendors coming on Broadway and there's too little spots. Metro is trying to push us all in front of Apple Building because there's 2 spots and 3 spots. And there's a lot of vendors that are trying to get there. And so that by itself needs to be planned out where everybody gets a spot, if it's possible, and for us to work together. That'll be all. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Name is Gary Daniels, representing Broadway LLC, also known as Moxie Nashville Downtown. I had a prepared statement, but after hearing everybody, figured I might want to abandon that. So I agree, first of all, with Layla's statement about moving to like first, she was saying about the Strip. You know, one thing with having a hotel right in the heart of Broadway, we get surveys all the time. After every stay, we get dozens per day. And I think that that's something that should be spoken to. A lot of our guests that come downtown complain, actually, a great deal about the crowding on the sidewalk. This is their words, the tourists, the people that bring in the money. They complain about the number of vendors, how many times that they've been aggressively approached. Now, like this young lady here pointed out, is that that's obviously not everybody, but it is an increasingly growing number of them. And it is becoming a trend in our surveys that is not getting better. It's actually getting worse the longer summer goes on. I recall at least 2 reviews that just said that they did not plan on returning to Nashville because Nashville is not the same that it was last time they visited. These type of things are concerning to us. And I think that they should be a wake-up call that we need to find a way, some middle ground between the bars, the brick and mortars, and the people that are vending. Because of course we want everybody to be successful, but as it stands right now, we are heading to utter destruction in my opinion. Thank you.
My name is Barrett Hobbs. Thanks for giving us a chance to talk about this today. I'm going to try not to rehash a lot of what was said, but I do want to counter a few points that were brought up. First, in the slides that were brought up early on, if you notice, it said seasonal vending. And I think that's important to look back at what our city was like in 1991, 1995, 1996, till about a decade ago. The reason that there was seasonal vending is because our tourism and convention business lasted 100 days. That was about it. You could pretty much just chalk it up. Labor Day weekend, it was over. You can go back 13 years ago, there was only 2 establishments from 3rd Avenue all the way down to the river 13 years ago. Hard Rock and then Whiskey Bent Saloon, which is one of our properties, were put in. There was no other food and beverage offered. So at that time, there was a need. There was, when I was 21, there was nobody serving food after 10 o'clock down there. I bought thousands of hot dogs. You can look at me and tell. I'm a fan of hot dogs and cold beer. So, there's a time and there's a place for everything. As I sit currently on the Music City Convention Board, there is a sense of panic that you can feel with our board and with the Nashville Visitors Corporation that gentleman just spoke about. It is a real problem that people are deciding not to come to Nashville in the future because the visitor experience has declined for the first time in Nashville's history over the last 5 to 6 years. We just went through a huge battle. It's still going on with transportainment. That's a perfect parallel to this conversation. The city has not kept up with the changing of times. I implore you to please catch them up. This bill may not be perfect, or this amendment, but what it does do is it resets the mark. And then you guys can say, we're going to pause, and then we're going to take a look at like Layla's ideas or some of the other great ideas and say, for the time being, we're going to eliminate this problem. Let's move forward with a plan that will make Nashville really not look ridiculous to our competing cities. Can you imagine going to Walt Disney World and there being a flop-up table to sell CBD or hot dogs at it? Or Denver or San Antonio? So I just think Nashville's in a different spot now, and it's you guys are the lucky ones to make the difference. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Just out of curiosity, because I don't want to shut anyone down, but at the same time, out of sense of time, is there anyone else wanting to speak after this gentleman? Okay. So we'll have, is there someone else? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Thank you.
My name is Brad Sanderson. I've owned and operated a few of the honky tonks on Broadway for a little over 20 years now. Go back 10 years or so, we used to have the occasional issues of new hot dog carts that would show up on Broadway, and it was basically like, we'll just be over to the side, be on the numbered street, no big deal, just don't stay right in the middle of everything. And post-COVID, it's been an explosion of tables just set up selling everything you can think of. So, if you go look at some of the other cities, we're not arguing against vending, we're arguing against tables in the middle of the sidewalks, I think is what a lot of the people are trying to have a change here on. And go to New Orleans, you've got the little square parks that they put all the artists on. They don't have them sitting on the main pedestrian right-of-ways. Bill Street, it's got the little park off the side. That's where they put all the vending at. Austin on 6th Street, you've got parking lots that are full of vending, and it's actually really cool. You get to go to one area, and there's all sorts of food or art or anything to choose from. So I'm not asking to just get rid of vending. It's just, let's just get rid of the tables on the sidewalks in the public right away, and let's put it together. And I think we actually can find a solution that works for both the brick and mortar and the vendors. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, please.
Hi, my name is Matthew Edwards. I'm a vendor downtown as well. I just wanted to speak. I'm also a member of the Stakeholder Action Committee and have attended regularly since its inception. I would like to say that the mayor's initiative to put an all-out ban, I believe, had a negative impact on the progress that we had made at those stakeholder action committees. I felt like that we had identified the resources that were available to us that could have made a real difference. I want to say that what we're finding is that we need to have clearly, we can't define vending. What is vending? That seems to be difficult because legal operations are being bunched into the vending operations of the homeless encampments on Broadway that are vending. Clearly defined, that's a vending operation. They have blankets, all that stuff. That's a problem for tourists. The scooters, the impediments to safety, big issue. I get it. But if somebody can show me one personal injury case that involves vendors, I mean, let's see it. What are we regulating a problem, or are we making, rules that for a problem that doesn't really exist when it comes to public safety? Is this a safety issue? Not compared to everything else down there, not at all. I mean, we have a lot of problems downtown. Let's continue to evaluate the resources that we have available to us to keep the energy, vibrancy of Nashville going. It doesn't have to eliminate vending at all. I'm all for, let's find some compromise, but the ban isn't it. If we're going to make a comparison to the transportainment, nobody shut down. They may have stopped issuing licenses, but the buses were running. So to say, hey, we're going to have an all-out ban on vending until we can figure it out, that's not congruent with the practice, the precedent that the city has already set for other areas. Anyway, thank you. Oh, and I would like the map that was issued, if there is a way that we can filter and find out how many of those pedestrian accidents that are referenced here actually involved vending. I think that that would do a lot to kind of illuminate how these two are associated. Because right now, you're just telling me that it's high pedestrian traffic in areas with lots of pedestrians and there are accidents, but you're not telling me that it involves vending in any way.
Thank you for your time. All right, I think, are you the last person to speak, I think? Oh, one more.
As much as we all would have appreciated that. My name is Benjamin Eagles. I work in Mayor Cooper's office. I want to appreciate all of you for being here today to address this issue. I understand that we're moving with urgency here to regulate vending, so I want to stress that Mayor Cooper appreciates your attention to sidewalk vending and stresses the urgency of dealing with this issue. Sidewalk vending has become a safety concern and a quality of life issue for downtown. Mayor Cooper requests that you take immediate action today. Now, during the last hour, you've heard from vendors as well as brick and mortar business owners, each of them with a financial interest in what goes on downtown. I would encourage you to focus on the public, pedestrians using the public right-of-way every day. NDOT's proposal will protect pedestrian safety and preserve accessibility throughout downtown. Mayor Cooper strongly supports adoption of the NDOT proposed map, as well as the directive to post signage where vending is currently allowed within the perimeter Mayor Cooper described at your June meeting, which was Union to Korean Vets and the river to 8th Avenue. And contrary to some assertions today, I would gently remind you that it was the Metro Nashville Police Department that initially brought this issue forward. This issue is bigger than politics. This updated map will provide clarity and result in a safer downtown with easier and smoother pedestrian flow in unobstructed rights of way. There was a question about what the disruptive effect is. The disruptive effect downtown is an obstructed right-of-way, a right-of-way that belongs to the public. As will be mentioned by NDOT, we intend to come back and work with you on an ordinance to comprehensively address sidewalk vending, including in areas beyond the zone mentioned by Mayor Cooper. I should add that we are confident in our legal justification for this regulation. After all, Nashville is not the first city to regulate its own rights of way. Thank you for your time and your work on this community priority.
Thank you. Okay. All right, you'll be the last speaker. Thank you.
My name is Will Wright. I represent the district, which is a 501c3 downtown that represents downtown merchants, residents, and organizations. And we hold monthly meetings with downtown merchants for the purposes of hearing from them various issues they face, such as trash, safety, noise, traffic, and more. Commander Ricky Bearden of the Metro Police and Central Precinct and other government officials are often in attendance of these meetings. And on our board of directors, we have it's represented by the owners such as Layla's, Johnny Cash Museum, Legends, House of Cards, Jack's Barbecue, Nashville Crossroads, Savannah's Candy Kitchen, The Stage on Broadway, Redneck Riviera, 208 Art Studio, Wild Horse Saloon, Civic Design Center, Nudi's Honky Tonk, Anderson Design Studio, the Viridian, Church Street Lofts, and the Exchange Buildings Lofts. We partner with Downtown Partnerships and many other areas affecting downtown. And it's our position that we support Mayor Cooper's recommendation that no sidewalk vendors be permitted on Broadway, 2nd Avenue, or any heavily pedestrian walkways at any time. Thank you.
Thank you. The public hearing is now closed. Okay, Commissioner Woods, you have a question.
Yes, question for the staff. I'm really concerned about pedestrian safety and what's going on the sidewalks. If I make a motion to approve the draft plan and to move to adopt the map plan, are we ready to implement that?
As far as implementation, we have talked about signing spots in the future that could be available, like on Demumbrian and some of the other streets that were not part of the restriction. I'm not sure we have talked about signing and how we would get the announcement out, what streets are restricted besides the regulation. So probably still more time to discuss how to implement. I don't think we could.
But if I'm making a motion that passes, that we adopt this strat plan, are we ready to go?
We would do everything in our power to.
Because the staff recommendation, is to.
Well, it was to discuss, I believe, this
Okay.
regulation. I don't think an action is required in this meeting, but we wanted to put something in front of you. That was the intent.
Okay.
And that was the ask.
Yes, Commissioner Woods.
I assume there are other
All right. Are there other commissioners with questions to ask?
Chairman, point of clarification. So in the form of what is stated on the agenda, sidewalk vending / consideration of draft regulations, what staff is asking us to do is to approve these recommendations or this draft. I'm a little bit unclear with the conversation that was just had.
Legal counsel, could you address the issue of I'll just say the wording of the agenda with what action we can take, please?
The wording of the agenda just says sidewalk vending, consideration of draft regulations. So I agree with Mr. Oldham, like you don't have to take action today.
But action could be taken, correct?
Yes.
Doesn't preclude action. So
Clearly
just
the
trying to
people
provide
who
options.
So what has been presented to us are the proposed regulations and the proposed map. I mean, and I just heard from the mayor's office again saying, we urge you to adopt this. Did I hear that correctly?
Mr. Odom, can you speak to that, staff?
Just one clarification, this may affect what you do today, but there was an error on the one that was posted on the website. I left off Church Street. It was shown in the map, but it was not in the written write-up. So I have that with me, but it was not on the website.
Okay. Any other commissioners' comments?
Commissioner Green.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner. Okay.
If you could just clarify for me one more time, if we were to approve anything at all today and that map, what happens to street vendors? Where do they go?
As far as street vendors and as far as Section 6, much of that area is already restricted. So, I mean, it's a good question, but what we have done so far is to allow them to vend in an area that is restricted.
So can we make a motion to stop that if it's jeopardizing pedestrian safety?
I mean, who originally brought this was Mmpd, and they were really asking for help because even when they issue a ticket, sometimes those tickets are discarded. Those people do not have permits. The map is honestly a small part of what's trying to be done as far as revisiting the regs, revisiting the ordinance, strengthening enforcement language. Several things really need to be done. The map has just been called for by the code section and the regulation, and we are just trying to get something out there that we feel, is NDOT, are streets that are a focus for NDOT as far as Vision Zero, as far as pedestrian safety. They're already technically, a lot of them, restricted by Section 6 based on the measurements, and there's a lot of them. And that's really hard for the police to go out and measure, and that's really hard for the vendors to, I haven't seen, maybe they got tape measures, but I'm not, it's really tough, I think. And there's other cities that have done a good job with publication and materials to help vendors, to help police, and like some have already said, we need to get there quickly. But
There, right.
yeah,
Yeah, okay, thank you.
there's a lot of work.
Thank you. Appreciate it, and I know everybody's working hard. Thanks.
Council member, you had a question.
Yes, sir. It was to build kind of on the point of clarification of Commissioner Tafel. So, staff recommendation is vote to approve draft sidewalk vendor regulation. And so, that's somewhat confusing to me, like, vote to approve a draft. And so I absolutely kind of hear and respect and appreciate the sense of urgency. And so I am trying to figure out, Chair, what are appropriate motions in the interim that are kind of fair and transparent, and to see, do we need to separate the map from the draft regulations? If the map is in keeping with the regulations as currently promulgated, I don't know if Ms. Costonas can speak to legally.
Yes.
Because on the council side, like, we're voting to approve a final draft of something. I don't understand why we vote to approve an interim draft.
Ms. Costonas, can you address this issue, please?
I'll do my best. So I will say that the staff analysis does also say a final update to sidewalk vendor regulations will be provided at the August commission meeting. So, I think there is some contemplation there that this might be an ongoing discussion. But, as far as the regulations are concerned, you all have the authority to amend them at any point in time. So you can adopt regulations and then amend them subsequently. So I'm not sure there is ever really a final version. There, are some, limitations on, it may be that you're supposed to adopt them by a 2/3 vote or something like that. But other than that, like, I think you have pretty much discretion to amend them. Of course, as legal counsel, I would always encourage you to make your decisions based on, evidence and the testimony that's been presented before you, and, to not be arbitrary and capricious.
Thank you. Quick question of clarification, just to make sure we're clear. It's my understanding that the map that you presented today, with this one, is based upon the existing, I'm just going to say, rules, regulations, ordinances that are in place today. Is that correct?
One more. Yeah, right there. Okay, based on the latest restrictions that are actually in the code section spelled out, that is what is restricted by section 7. That refers to a map. That is what is restricted. Section 6 is not shown on any map, which is just measurements from curb returns and parking meters and 100 other things. And that's a challenge.
So you go to the other map. Could you clarify what does that map reflect, please?
That map would be a reflection of what is currently restricted and additional streets that would be restricted based on pedestrian safety concerns that NDOT has, just from the photos, from crash information, and in a response to one of the questions that we had, a lot of these, it does not say pedestrian ran into vendor and fell in the street. It does not have that kind of detail. It's just vehicle hit person in the street. You can tell sometimes that this is a person crossing mid-block, but it's just really, there's a lot of people that are under the influence that are filling up sidewalks, and it's just challenging to navigate those streets at times.
So does the commission need to approve anything to make that map effective, or is that map basically effective based upon what exists today? It just needs to be published, because
I did change the language in section 7, so there are streets that are added that were not in section 7. And to go back to an earlier conversation, again, this was not filed, that version, the 2017 version that I modified. It was adopted, but not filed. So there is just some cleanup that needs to be done, but we just wanted to get, our recommendation from what we've heard and what we've been looking at to you, to the commission.
Can we ask that, this did start with the police coming to us with a powerful ask. Can we hear from the police at our, with whatever the final thing is, saying this is workable? Or is that, is there something that we can hear saying this is what we need to do because this commission works with pedestrian safety?
I'm Officer Clint Gillian with the Metro Police Department. I know I've presented before this very same board before. I think it's going to be imperative that the police department is going to be a part of the process in trying to at least introduce some of our challenges that we have. Because, this Friday at 12 o'clock, regardless of what regulations you put out, the street's going to be littered with not only people, but vendors and scooters and things of that nature. And so I think it's going to be very important that the police department at least be able to give some insight on what type of challenges that we are constantly presented with when it comes to try to enforce some of this regulation. Because to date, if a citation would fix it, we wouldn't be here. Citations alone is not going to fix the problem.
Officer, if you wouldn't mind, with the current amendments that have been done to this draft, did you guys present your feedback to NDOT and to our staff? That reflects in this?
We have been present, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know, I've not read your final draft and know what all is being proposed. But we have been present during a lot of these same meetings just to try to provide some type of insight. But that may not have been to everybody here present who has, maybe not everybody has an understanding of some of the situations or the obstacles that we've been faced with.
Okay. All right. And kind of what I've heard is we have some information that's been presented today. I think to ensure that the public has been properly notified of those changes, which you noted that you had to revise the post.
Yeah, I think that's, as has been mentioned before, the last meeting that we had most recently with the advisory committee on sidewalk vending was last Thursday. So we tried to put together something to have for this meeting and trying to hear everyone. I think vendors were the last to speak at that meeting. So yes, we are doing our best to get something, in front of the commission. But it is up to the commission, to think about it and for some last minute changes or error that I made that I did not catch to be corrected and published for the public. That is something to consider.
All right. Yes.
What to juggle.
Yes. Okay. Yes, council member.
Thank you, Chair Green. I just want to clarify, we've talked about a working group, an advisory committee, a stakeholder action committee. I know staff shared with us at last meeting when those next meetings would be, but I kind of want to understand, I appreciate those who came today sharing that they have participated in that process. But I wanted to understand, is this a working group? Is it a subcommittee of this commission? What is it charged with specifically? Like, what is the charge of the committee? And kind of who are the members? And I've looked online to try to find, have the meetings been recorded? I'm just interested because, MNPD sharing that they've not yet seen these draft regulations. I'm wanting to understand from a notice and fair warning
All right,
standpoint where we are.
Thank you. Mr. Odoms, can you speak to the maybe interchangeable language, but there's been an advisory group, a stakeholder group, whatever the phraseology is?
Yeah, I think we wanted to capture ultimately with this group what the issues were. They originated from MNPD, but we did not want to just act on one source. So we wanted to hear from everyone. So it's kind of been informal. We have had some agendas, maybe who MNPD prepared a presentation with pictures of some of the issues that they had or saw, with sidewalk vendors and health concerns and more. We've heard from Downtown Partnership, from merchants, from health, from the clerk's office. So it's really just to kind of capture, all stakeholders' views.
Okay.
And I can speak to, if I may, the
Yes.
issues with regard to the notice of those meetings. So that committee is just an advisory committee. It's not like an official board or commission of the metropolitan government. And it's an advisory, I would argue that it's an advisory committee to a single executive decision maker, which makes it exempt from open meetings. I would argue that it's really an advisory committee to the Department of Transportation and ultimately to their director, and for them to come up with a recommendation to make to this commission. And so that's not something that's required to be covered by open meetings.
Okay.
Okay, Chair, just last, and to
Yes.
build on that.
One last comment, please. Thank you.
So what we received on Friday via email to the commission was put online at what time precisely on Friday?
I was not the web person, the exact time, I'm not sure. It should have gone up close to the time that you received the email, because I sent it to you and the web person, and she confirmed it was online within the hour that you received it.
Okay, so we received it in our inbox at what time?
Do you have that email?
I believe it was mid-morning. Can anybody help with that? Anyone?
I have it pulled up. It's 11:39.
Okay, so 11:39, an hour subsequent. Ms. Costonis, does that meet legal notice provisions, or are you asserting that because it is the work of an advisory committee to the director, that no 48-hour notice is required?
I think we're talking about two different things.
Yeah, so yes, I agree with the chairman there. So first of all, I would say that as far as the Open Meetings Act is concerned, really the only thing that the act itself speaks to is just adequate notice of the meeting. So this is a regularly scheduled meeting, not a specially called meeting of the Traffic and Parking Commission. So to provide a copy of the map would be a good best practice in advance, but I don't think not doing so would actually be a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Having said that, like I said, I do think it is a best practice, especially since, as Mr. Oldham was saying, the language we would like to update and correct to reflect church as well, that it might be sort of the best practice to take a little bit more time to consider it.
In that case, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move to defer for
There's
a month.
a motion to defer.
Second.
There's a second. We have a first and second. Is there any further discussion? Yes, council member.
I guess in deciding whether or not to support this deferral at this juncture and to respond to the sense of urgency from the business community and from the mayor's office, I would like to just drill down, if we could, a little bit more on the map that has been provided to folks who are currently vending. Okay, and so the enforcement that we can do in that context presently per the current code, right? So there are restrictions now. There is a map now, albeit NDOT expressing that there is a discrepancy between the what's referred to as the Mmpd map. That map, though, is provided by the county clerk's office to all people with an active vendor permit. Is that correct or no?
They provide a different map that just shows the CF and DTC zone.
Okay, so I'm just, Chair, if I can, because what I'm trying to determine is there a middle path that's responsive to the mayor's office and business concerns that addresses the map separate from the draft regulations? So I do understand Mr. Oldham spoke to what I think the complexity of this is sort of the layers, right? There's what's in code, there's what's in the regs. Those are a discrepancy, and that's a challenge that I've had in serving on this board these now kind of 8 or 9 months. There are, in my view, too many unclear pathways to amend and support this area of code. What comes through this commission, what comes through council, they have to speak to each other. I think that's why I'm here, right? I think that's why you have a council member on this.
That is correct.
But I have only been here, for the last 8 to 9 months. So I guess I am just trying to understand with the code at present, with the maps that are publicly available and provided to the vendor, what is the change? And I appreciate you've laid it out here, but I'm hoping we can just distill it and articulate it. The maps that are presently given when you have a permit. So anybody who's here that's a permit holder, what their understanding is based on the map that they receive. Is this, yes, you're adding church, you're adding, is that only spoken to in
Ms.
section
Alcorn,
7?
Can you speak to this, please?
So I think you're on the right pathway. And so the middle ground would be is if this commission could move the map forward that has been presented, that would allow us to actually go to the next stage, which would be coming back with more regulation tied to an ordinance that would then go to council. So the pathway forward that I think you would give us that would allow us to meet a lot of the intent in the conversation today would allow us to start working a little bit closer with the vendors based on the map that we presented. And then we would come back to y'all with further regulation as well as a direction toward ordinance to correct all the discrepancies.
Okay. Question, legal
Then
counsel.
I'd like to withdraw my motion then.
Okay,
To defer.
we had a first and a second. How do we need to make, I guess there's,
If the movement withdraws her motion and the second agrees with the withdrawal, then the motion is off the table.
agreed. Okay, thank you.
So then I'd like to make a different motion.
Okay, please.
I'd like to move that we approve the maps today. And what else do I need to do to help the staff in my motion?
It would be to ask us to come back at the next meeting with follow-up regulations and a potential draft ordinance that we would then move forward after this commission's approval to council for approval, correct?
So yes, there are some issues that have been considered, both in some of the comments that the commission has heard here today and in the advisory committee meetings about things that in order to accomplish them would require a change of the Metro Code and not just a change of the regulations. This commission can enact regulations so long as they are consistent with the Metro Code. You cannot, you can impose additional regulations, but you can't go beneath anything that is specified in the Metro Code.
Commissioner Woods, would you like to?
I'd like to say, I'd like to make the motion to go ahead and move to adopt the map that was presented today with the understanding that next month we can come back with a plan of action Is that the word? we're
A
looking
final draft is what I believe would be
Final
the
draft,
best way to
final draft, for
describe
feedback on that final draft, based on the maps that we approved today.
Correct. And also, if I can ask for just one more additional thing to your motion, and that is to also direct us to sign where appropriate vending can occur at. Cannot, excuse me, I cannot occur. If you could direct staff on where vending cannot occur.
And included in that motion to direct staff to include where vending cannot occur.
Okay,
Can, oh my gosh, you guys are confusing me.
okay.
Okay.
Let's start again and rephrase, please.
So
Your
it
motion.
is signage of where vending can occur. If you
Okay.
can direct staff on us to properly sign where vending can occur.
Okay, we're going to try this again.
Thank you.
I move to adopt the map plan that was presented today with a directive to staff to provide signage where vending can occur.
Thank you.
Are we requesting final regulations for next meeting?
I believe that is what I personally would like to see.
And included in the motion, come back with final regulations next month.
Thank you.
Okay.
In the August meeting.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yes, ask away, please.
Can we identify, or is there a way, I think you brought up a good question in section 5, and we've talked about a few things, just identify some things for this final regulation that we are looking for and or have identified, so that when it comes back, we have something that has our input and questions answered, so that we can clearly vote and apply something both for the business community and the vendors.
I believe to make that a little bit more specific, with the, we meet every month, so would the 30 days be ample time so that, with no disrespect, we got this on Friday, meeting is on Monday, we'd hate to go through that again.
Yes, we can get you back the regulation and update on a more efficient time frame than what we did in this one. Again, we had our last meeting on Thursday. We wanted to get this before you for conversation, but we will definitely finalize this, get it wrapped up, and get it to you in a more appropriate time for review and consideration. So, and also give you time to address any questions to us that we will have the appropriate responses in a public setting.
Let's aim to distribute all these a week in advance of the meeting, please. Okay. All right, we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Yes, council member.
Okay, so to clarify, the map that we have before us as attachment A, which is online presently, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The map has a correction that is needed, correct, particular to Church Street?
That map is actually showing Church Street, and it shows Church Street to Second. The wording that was needed was to close a gap between Second and First.
Okay.
And so I have an updated map that you see right now. That is the updated map
Okay.
that you're seeing,
So
not the one online.
The map that I printed out at home has a break between
right.
Second and First. So that is the only
That is the
change to this
only
map. I just wanted
change.
to clarify that. And the, Chair, if I may, this map that we are adopting as a commission today is where you may not vend. Is that correct?
It is restricted on those streets. The only exception is Mmpd, where in the code it says there are spots that are allowed, but they have not been identified. And that is the only street in the code section that says there are spots that are allowed, but they have never been identified. That was going to be an effort that NDOT tries to go out and see if there's spots on Mmpd that can be allowed.
So if I can just, Councilmember, yes.
Yes.
So this map is identifying where they will not be allowed to vend. And as Jason had spoken to, part of what we would bring back to y'all in a month are those identified areas that we'll bring back. So as of right now, if you allow us to move forward with this map, this is what will apply to everyone. And then we'll make those final things that we need to bring back to you, along with also if we have any recommendations and changes in the ordinance that we would want to take forward to council.
Okay, so this map would then apply, to be clear, for the next month.
Yes, ma'am.
How will this map be sent to people who have active vending permits?
We will work with the clerk's office in getting this out to them because they have the information. We'll also work with PD about making sure we circulate it out on the streets so that we'll understand that they can no longer vend in the area. And then we'll ask them to remove their vending, to remove themselves from these locations because it's not illegal.
Would the motion not then need a date specific by which this map applies, with the commitment to have it distributed to active permit holders? Or is it just?
Legal counsel, please.
I mean, I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so.
Okay.
So.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir.
Okay, so what's a date that's reasonable to expect that the dissemination, et cetera, would allow this to take effect?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Apologize for a minute delay. Just wanted to confer with my counterpart back there. But we would ask for 7 days. So we would spend the next 7 days actually getting the information out. We do have some vendors that are transit, so we may miss a few, but we feel like we'll get at least a large majority of the vendors that are out on the street and would be able to actually expedite this and put an effective date in 7 days.
Okay, so that's 7, it's now after 5 o'clock, which is close of business
So
for.
we'll start with day 1 tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, and then if I may, Chair, I don't know if anybody with the Davidson County Clerk can confirm or staff can confirm, but every vendor permit that is active now, there is a corresponding email address to that. So when we commit within a week, within the next week, before this would be the temporary map pending new regs, we will commit to email everyone with an active permit.
Yes, ma'am.
We will commit to express in that email that this remains in progress. This is a temporary map to be enforced as of 7 business days from today. And then I think I would ask that it be clear what the changes are. I mean, again, that's to you all to please go back and ascertain what has been provided, whether through the Davidson County Clerk or Mmpd, anything that you think is helpful to the vendors to understand the difference. So there's the map itself, but I would ask that we communicate that clearly. And then lastly, Chair, I apologize, I'm losing my train of thought here just a little bit as it relates to the map, the dissemination of it, the explanation of it. Oh, the signage part, okay? So I'm with you here, but when we start to say now, within this temporary time of a month, well, really, what we're saying now is 3 weeks. Are y'all sure? Because 3 weeks after you're gonna say this map is effective, you're gonna be back to us. And so in those intervening 3 weeks, you all are gonna put up signage. Now, here's the confusion, Chair. Putting signage where it's allowed, that's a whole nother thing, right? Because we haven't, as a commission, discussed, oh, this area by Riverfront or this area. Nobody's voted on that, right? We're talking about an interim measure of advancing this map. So this is where it's not allowed.
Correct.
Where it is allowed is a whole nother question that I would assert has to be addressed by the new regulations, respectfully. So I do not think the signage, if you want to put up signage about it's not allowed here, fine. But if you want to put up signage about it is allowed here in this specific area, while I think that idea may have merit, I don't think we can do that without adopting the draft regulations.
Quick question.
I think I can clarify that.
I think there's a clarification here. We're
Yeah.
talking about a restricted zone, and my understanding of the motion is the signage would be inside of this, what I'm going to describe as a restricted zone. Is that correct?
We do want to put signage up that reflects where you cannot be vending. And then at a later date, when we do bring back the regulations and where we recommend designated areas, we would sign that accordingly. But the council member is correct. We are not ready for that today. I was confused in it. It is actually where they cannot vend. We would put up signs with that just to make it even more, a little bit clearer, so that everyone's aware that this is an area they cannot, and it'll be based on the map. That's the direction we move on. When we come back to y'all in a month with the updated regulations or changes to the regulations, as well as any recommendations to the changes to the ordinance, we would also have then recommendations of identifying where, you know, as Jason had mentioned, it says that you can specify areas along Mmpd, but we've never done that. We will look into that and provide that as well as part of the next steps when we come back in August, and we would sign that accordingly. So right now it was cannot.
May I,
Yes,
may I
question.
add one thing?
Yes.
If I don't want to speak for NDOT, but tell me if this is correct. So in addition to the new map that we've been talking about, there is also existing section 6 of the rules, which has all the clearances and distances from, disabled parking spaces or, fire hydrants or, visual impairments at intersections, and in the laundry list of several more. So what NDOT could do is take the streets that are not in orange on this map and apply those clearances to those areas to determine where vending would be allowed.
I think you had a question, Commissioner, while they consult. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. My confusion is coming in with, with adopting a map. And for all of the folks here that spoke today, I have a great deal of respect for everybody in this room for all the different things that everyone's trying to accomplish and work together on. But what do they do in the interim? If we can't identify it, we can identify where you can't go, but then what do they do? That's a challenge for me to understand.
Okay. Who can address that question, please?
All right. This is Jason's recommendations. Like I said before, Section 6 is very challenging with the growth that Nashville has. If we go out tomorrow and we stick up a fire hydrant or something else that affects the location that a vendor can vend, any map that we produce for Section 6, which would be using the measurement criteria, would be null and void, okay? And that's the real challenge, and I don't know the best answer for that. NDOT, hiring, working with our consultants. We have a great consultant working on a Connect Downtown study. Maybe we could do an addendum or something like that, but I think you'll find something similar what the Mmpd folks have already put out there. There are very few legal spots in this area. There's just very few. When you get out there and you start looking at all the loading zones, parking meters, doors to restaurants, businesses, etc., it just goes away based on Section 6. And if you wanted to free up spaces, you'd have to go into Section 6 with a scalpel and you'd have to really dig in there. We could probably provide a map and show this based on Section 6, this is kind of what's allowed that's not restricted, and give you kind of an idea of how restrictive Section 6 is alone. But we don't have a map for Section 6.
Okay.
But I think it's just one point of clarity, is that had this been done, they wouldn't be out there vending today. That's really where we're at. And what this is actually, by publishing this map and saying this is it, then this allows the police to do what they need to do. And so there is a few areas that they would, but it's very minimal compared to what they're doing today. And so this is really kind of allowing us to clean up what's in regulation and get it, and we'll continue to bring it back to you. But this is something that is going to help us kind of straighten out what should have already been done, and has been done, but not really spelled out well in our code and mirrors our regulations. So we're just trying to bring it back, identify those discrepancies. We have a little bit more work to do, but we do need to start moving forward in this direction. Thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table. I'm going to call for the yeas and the nays. Yes, ask away, please.
So what I heard and what I'm hearing is that the regulations in section 6 are so stringent or what have you, that pretty much determines the map per se.
Section 6.
Along with
Section-
MNPD's recommendations.
Section 6 is not mapped officially, but MNPD did provide a map where they kind of applied Section 6. So it did restrict a lot of the streets in the downtown around Broadway. Councilmember Henderson?
Wait just a second.
Okay.
Did you get your question answered?
I believe so. So
Okay. I just want to make sure
MNPD
you
basically said there's section 6 that's here.
Yeah.
There's not a map that reflects section 6 that's clear. The public doesn't know about it. We need to create one that
That-
reflects section 6.
I think that would help the police and the public to clean up Section 6.
Okay. All right, council member.
I think my question, Chair, comes in, whether or not to adopt this motion particular to the map as we have before us, which I think staff is asserting, though not precisely aligned to X distance from a loading zone, X distance from a fire hydrant, like that detailed mapping, based on the map that MMPD has historically shared, that was their best effort for their officers to implement Section 6 as it currently stands, with a few adjustments, that this map is pretty close to representing the restrictions that are in code per Section 6. And I think, what I want to say as a council member, what we hear as from our citizens, pretty much my constituents, I don't go downtown anymore. I don't do it, right? So I think, we have pressure, understandably, from, the hospitality community, but also, I just will say as an elected representative with constituents who email me, from them as well, address downtown, address all this people accosting me, et cetera. So what I want to say to the mayor's office, if Mr. Eagles is still here, and to staff, is that we hear a lot about, oh, this is hard to enforce, or we can't enforce this, or there's, but Section 6 is there today. And so I would say if there is a sense of urgency, and I know, oh, we don't have enough resources, whatever, but like, if this is the kind of thing that we are being asked as a commission, receiving something on a Friday to pass on a Monday with a sense of urgency that I share and understand, then we should bring the same sense of urgency, respectfully, to just getting out there and enforcing the section as we have it today. So we have a mayor-dominant system. If the mayor says to NDOT, MNPD, Chief Drake, to assemble a strike team, or whatever, we want to call it, a safety team, and go and enforce Section 6 as it is today, if we were enforcing Section 6 as it is today, with some minor tweaks, understandably, we wouldn't have this problem. Is that correct, Director Alarcon?
I think yes and no, and I think that's why this map is going to provide that clarity. And so there has been some confusion, and I think that just to make it very clean so that everybody has a very clear understanding, we wanted to, that's why we were asking if we could move this forward. We'll do the community outreach we need to do through the clerk's office of reaching out to the vendors, sharing with them where and what they can do, as well as we'll work with PD about it as well so that they can also reach out to the vendors so we can get it done. But there has been a lack of clarity, and so I think this is actually bringing a lot of clarity to the conversation.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything
Thank
else?
you.
All right. So We have a motion, we have a second. I think everyone's made their comments. I'll call for the yeas and nays. All in favor?
Aye.
Right, okay. Okay, who's opposed? Okay, we have 2 opposed. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4 yeas. Okay, so the motion passes. Okay. Thank you. All right. I think the only other item was this resolution 2207, which has to relate that we're supposed to be, we should be signing a document at the end of every meeting that everyone is here in attendance, then we would probably not have these minute issues.
Only when there's an item that affects the traffic schedule.
Okay.
And we do not have that at this agenda, but we did want to emphasize, we'll probably have this on other agendas if applicable, so that it gets done.
Okay, so do we need to make a motion? Legal counsel, please, legal counsel.
Mr. Holland, Mr.
Yeah.
Holland, the meeting hasn't concluded, so.
Yes, legal counsel,
Yes,
please.
sorry, sir.
Okay. What is it that we need to approve with resolution 2207, please?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with
Chase,
that.
what do we need?
It does not need to be this
Nothing needs to
meeting.
be approved, you're just making
It's
us aware.
just
Okay.
making you aware.
All right, so I think we have no other items.
Make a motion to adjourn.
We are gonna adjourn. Need second?
Second.
All in favor? All right, we'll see everybody next time.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.